So the self-described stable genius, Donald Trump, did an event last night with Elon Musk, and he sounded like a blithering idiot because, well, he is a blithering idiot. But the event itself shows you what I've been telling you now for weeks, and that is the more that this man speaks, the worse he makes it for himself. And the fact that Kamala Harris is doing as well as she is, the fact that she is leading in virtually every poll now nationally and in a lot of the swing state polling, that's only going to make Donald Trump want to get out there more. The man obviously is a pathological, malignant narcissist. He cannot possibly grasp the fact that people don't like him. And the more that he talks and the more that he gets in people's faces, the more that people are reminded of why they don't like him. Donald Trump, for the last 4 years, has been helped tremendously by really being out of most people's daily lives. You know, he was posting his batshit crazy stuff on Truth Social, but most people aren't on Truth Social. And the media doesn't really cover what he's doing over there. He spent the last 4 years mostly committing crimes and playing golf, and neither of which was covered very much by the media. His criming largely was ignored. Of course, I think they probably did cover his golfing more than they covered his criming. They certainly didn't cover at all the batshit crazy things he was saying. You know, they gave scant coverage when he would do things like meet with white supremacists at his beach club. So largely he was out of most people's daily lives. They weren't paying attention to this guy. And so sort of a Trump amnesia kicked in, and people forgot a lot about this guy. They forgot what they knew about him. That coupled with the fact that most Americans have the attention span of a goldfish, you put all that together, and people really forgot why they don't like this guy. But Donald Trump is doing us all a tremendous service by getting in everyone's faces and reminding us all why we can't stand this guy. And so when he goes on X, formerly known as Twitter, with Elon Musk and does this rambling disaster of a interview. I mean, I know this was billed as an interview, but from the clips I heard, it didn't sound like much of an interview. It basically sounded, and I will admit that I didn't listen to the thing. Why the hell would I do that to myself? I have too much respect for myself to sit there and listen to those two lunatics. So, but I've listened to some of the clips, and from what I could tell, there wasn't really an interview. There was Donald Trump just hijacking the conversation, for lack of a better term. I don't know that it was much of a conversation either. It was basically Donald Trump rambling about disjointed topics, and Elon Musk sitting there, and every once in a while interjecting, yeah, or trying to make some sort of stupid point while Donald Trump interrupted him and talked over him. That's pretty much it. And when Donald Trump talks extemporaneously as he did, he's bound to say some stupid things that only serve to hurt him. This despite the fact that he clearly had a bunch of prepared notes. I've seen, some video of him talking there. I don't know what room it was there in Mar-a-Lago. This wasn't a video stream, I don't believe. I think it was just an audio spaces thing on Twitter. But I saw some pictures or video of Donald Trump talking on his phone. He had his phone on his table, and he clearly had prepared notes in front of him, which I don't think he consulted at all. He was just speaking off the top of his head and just droning on and on about whatever insanity popped in between his ears. And so you got the typical things, is his railing against Joe Biden, as if Joe Biden was still the candidate. He desperately wishes Joe Biden were still the candidate, and he hasn't quite gotten over the fact that Joe Biden is not the candidate. But he went on and on and on about Joe Biden. Of course, he talked about Kamala Harris, insulted her looks, called her stupid, all of this stuff. I don't know how he thinks this helps him. And by the way, before I get to this clip about Elon Musk, this guy, first of all, he's a nut. He really is. I don't know what's wrong with this guy. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about Elon Musk, but this guy's out there. He is a lunatic. And I've been saying this for a while. I fully expect at some point in the future for Elon Musk to completely lose his fortune, because he is a nut. And people like him, they crash and burn, or they tend to. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the not too distant future, Elon Musk loses everything. Because this is a man, I mean, what he should be doing is just working on his businesses. He has the ability to do some really wonderful things. Like, personally, I am very much into space exploration, and it's something that Elon Musk has a passion for. And the things that he is talked about doing in terms of space exploration, I think is amazing. And I wish he would focus on that kind of thing. But instead, he obsesses over this culture war crap. You know, he's one of these way online right-wing loons who lives in this conspiracy theory world, and the man's just losing it. And we've seen that people who go down that rabbit hole, they spiral, man. They spiral into this world. I don't know where this guy's going to end up, but my guess is it's not going to be anywhere good. And he's going to lose his fortune. That's what I think is going to happen. And honestly, I got to be honest, I hope that's what happens, because this piece of shit deserves it for what he's doing to this country in the disinformation, the propaganda, trying to get, a would-be dictator elected. I mean, fuck this guy. I hope he crashes and burns. Anyway, another thing about Elon Musk, he's also a good example of how an obviously smart man, I mean, he may be brilliant. As I said, I don't spend too much time thinking about this guy. But, I mean, he's obviously a smart man in some aspects of his life, maybe a brilliant man in some aspects of his life. But he's a good example of how a smart or even brilliant person could get wrapped up in a cult of stupidity. Because that's been one of the recurring themes during the Trump years. How can smart people go along with this? Because it's not just, the blithering idiot, drooling mouth breathers who follow Donald Trump. Not everyone who follows Trump, spends their time sitting on a dilapidated love seat that they have propped up against the side of their single wide. You know what I mean? With their one tooth left, dating their sister. That's sort of the caricature, and it's also does accurately describe probably a lot of Trump supporters, but not all of them. Not all of them are like that. I mean, we see these people in our daily lives. Many of us have them in our families. These are people who are educated, who have good jobs, who are otherwise smart, did well in college and all of this, but yet they support Donald Trump. I mean, the man speaks at, seriously, like a fifth grade level, if that. He spends most of his time, even in public speeches, just engaging in like juvenile name calling. He has no policy, goals or objectives. I mean, he pretends he does, but he doesn't. He doesn't care about any of this stuff. He can't talk about any of this stuff. I mean, I saw this during that press conference last week at Mar-a-Lago. He was asked about the abortion drug that was the subject of a court case last year. And a district court judge banned it nationwide. That has since been overturned. But this is part of the abortion debate. And Donald Trump was asked if he was reelected, if he would have the FDA put a nationwide ban on it. And it was very, very clear he didn't even know what the hell it was. He went rambling on about, how people have to vote, and it just a completely non-responsive question that made obvious to everyone that he knew nothing about this. And this is something that has been a front and center issue that has gotten a lot of press. Anyway, this guy doesn't have policy positions. He can't articulate anything. He can't talk substantively. That's why he doesn't want to do debates with Kamala Harris. Now, I know he has ostensibly agreed to doing some of these debates, but I think he's going to wiggle out of it, unless he's like, way down in the polls and he feels he has no other choice. But I don't see him taking the stage, and he's still leaving himself an out, because Kamala Harris doesn't look like she's going to agree to Fox News, to doing a debate on Fox News. And I don't think she should. Now, I heard, by the way, please bear with me, because as these, as I'm talking, I'm having other thoughts pop into my head, and so I just go with them. But believe me, I do have sort of an organization to what I want to discuss, which I'll return to. But I heard James Carville, he was, the main political strategist for Bill Clinton, and he thinks that Kamala Harris should go on Fox News and debate. Because if anything, maybe she can reach some of these people. And if not, she's at least showing that she's tougher than Trump, that she'll go on to Fox News while Donald Trump is whining about ABC. It's not like those two are even remotely comparable. Anyways, he thinks that she should just go ahead and go on Fox News. Now, part of me understands that and normally would say, yeah, why not? You take your message everywhere. Like Pete Buttigieg. That man is fearless. He goes on Fox News and he does incredibly well. Now, it's not the same perhaps as a debate, but he goes on there on these interview programs and he does amazingly well. And the questioner is always hostile. It's a Fox News Trump cultist conducting the interview. And they're not really there to conduct an interview. They're there to be an advocate for Donald Trump. And so they throw every bit of Trump propaganda at Pete Buttigieg, and he handles it, perfectly. I mean, the man is so good at this. So, and I don't think Kamala Harris is quite as good at that sort of thing as Pete Buttigieg, but she's plenty capable of handling herself, I have no doubt. So part of me says, yeah, go on Fox News and take it to him. However, I think Fox News has covered itself in such disgrace. Now, we all know what Fox News is. Fox News is a pure propaganda outlet. They made a business decision right around the election in 2020, shortly after the election, when Bret Baier made the announcement for Fox. I think it was Bret Baier. Fox was the first network to call Arizona for Joe Biden. And that sent Donald Trump off the rails. And he was attacking Fox News. And he was telling people to leave Fox News, go to Newsmax and OAN. And they were. And Fox News was bleeding audience. And right then and there, they decided, they had been playing footsie with Trump. They wanted to try to be a credible news organization. That's why they went out. And as soon as they believed that the numbers showed that Joe Biden would win Arizona, that they made the call. So they were still trying to be a serious news organization while clearly being politically in the tank for Trump. Well, once they made that call and Trump started attacking them, they decided we can't have a foot in both worlds. We can't be both a serious news organization and be cheerleaders for Trump. It's got to be one or the other, because you can't be a serious news organization while worrying about what Donald Trump is going to say about you. And you can't do the Trump cult propaganda crap and still be a serious news organization. So they decided, to hell with it. Money's more important. We're losing people. We're going to lose money. We've got to go all in on the Trump cult propaganda, or we're going to lose our audience to Newsmax or whoever else. So that's when they went all in. They started pushing the election lies post-election, and the rest is history. But as a result of all that, they were sued by Dominion, and they settled for like $750 million because they were lying sacks of shit. They did nothing but lie and engage in propaganda and say only on their air what Donald Trump wanted them to say. And so, while at one point you could make the argument that, yes, they have a point of view, they're right-leaning, maybe far right-leaning, but they're a serious news organization. And it would be the serious news people who would be conducting the debate. But you can no longer say that. They are no aspect of them is a serious news organization. They still try to pretend, but we should not let them even pretend anymore. And for Kamala Harris to agree to a debate on Fox News would be to participate in their fraud. That's how I see it. If you're going to go on there as a presidential candidate, you are giving them legitimacy. You are saying that this is a serious news organization. Yes, they might be right-leaning, but they're a serious news organization. And for that reason alone, Kamala Harris, in my opinion, should not do a debate on Fox News, because they are not a serious news organization, and we should not be participating in that fraud. Okay, it would be no different than her going on Newsmax and doing a presidential debate, or going on Steve Bannon's podcast, for God's sakes. So no, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to disagree with James Carville on this. While she's totally capable of doing it, and while there maybe could be potentially some small benefit if she could reach some people in the Fox News audience, I think the damage of giving them legitimacy in the long run is much worse. They don't deserve for us to treat them with any legitimacy. So that's what I have to say about that. Now, let me go ahead and, let me just circle back and put the period at the end of what I was saying about Elon Musk being a good, pardon me, I am itchy. Allergies. Elon Musk being a perfect example, because we see this in our lives. We know otherwise smart people who fall into this garbage. And by the way, Fox News is an extremely important factor in all of that, because these people have spent, a long time watching Fox News, trusting Fox News. And it's like the frog placed in boiling water. They didn't realize, because I used to watch Fox News myself. Fox News today, as for the reason I explained, Fox News today is not the same as Fox News was 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, of course. But 5 years ago, it was worse than it was 10 years ago, much worse than it was 15 years ago. But back when I used to watch Fox News, it wasn't anywhere near what it is today. Okay, it's just not. And I know some people like to say that it is, but it's just not true. It was not anywhere near as bad as it is today. And so people who used to watch Fox News, suddenly Fox News begins to change into just pure propaganda for Donald Trump. They don't see it. They don't realize that it's propaganda. They just have always trusted Fox News, so they continue to trust Fox News. And so whatever they say, including the stolen election crap, they just believed. Because it's not just Donald Trump saying it, it's Fox News, and I trust Fox News. I've been watching Fox News for so long. And a lot of them don't know any better. So when they're being lied to, for example, about the Constitution, and whether the vice president has authority to throw out electoral votes, they don't freaking know. But if Fox News tells them that the vice president can do it, well, then they'll believe it. Anyways, Fox News is part of the problem. It's one of the main factors, reasons why otherwise smart people can be led astray and believe all of this garbage. Because just because you might be good in your job, or you're I don't know, pick your profession, you're an accountant, you're the best accountant ever, and you have a master's degree in accounting, right? You're really, really smart in all that stuff. Doesn't mean you know a damn thing about the law, a damn thing about politics, a damn thing about the Constitution, but you watch Fox News and they're telling you all this stuff, so maybe you're inclined to believe it. So people can be really smart in some things, some aspects of their lives, but be blithering idiots in others. Partly because, for some of them, it's because they don't know any better. For some of them, it's because they're so enmeshed in partisan politics that they don't care what's true. And they just lose themselves to the partisanship. There's lots of reasons. But Elon Musk, and I don't know what makes that guy tick, but he's a good example, because if you follow him at all on Twitter and you see the things that he posts, if you just didn't know anything about the guy and you just read his posts on Twitter, you would not think that this is a smart man. You would think this guy's a fucking idiot because he says really, really stupid shit. Okay? And there's no way that he's really that stupid, because he wouldn't have been able to do all these other things that he's done in his life if he was really this fucking stupid in all aspects of his life. He's just not. But this is true for a lot of other people, seemingly normal people in your life that that you say, well, they're smart. I just don't get it. It's because you could be smart in one aspect and a blithering idiot in others for lots of different reasons. Okay, now let me finally get to this clip. And this is a good example of how you should let Donald Trump talk. And by the way, since his news conference of last week, when he was at that news conference, he, of course, as he always does, lied incessantly, because that's what he does. He can't help himself. So he lied ad nauseum. And there's, a lot of people were angry that the networks participated in this. Donald Trump just put out a statement saying, I'm going to have a press conference, a press availability at Mar-a-Lago, and they just show up. They don't have to show up. They can say, good for you, we're not coming. You know what I mean? Talk to an empty room. They could do that. They don't have to cover him, but they do. And not only do they cover him, they don't even ask him any tough questions, which is another whole thing. I don't want to get going on that. But there was a lot of criticism saying you shouldn't cover him at all when he calls for a press event. Well, I totally understand that sentiment because it's basically just free advertising for himself, right? I mean, he doesn't have to pay for that. He doesn't have to run ads. The media is covering it. It's free. The problem is, for him, it doesn't help him. And that's why I think, with respect to Trump, they should cover him. Let this idiot talk, okay? And he will expose himself. As I said at the beginning of this, Donald Trump has benefited greatly from people forgetting about him over the last 4 years, forgetting about what an insane lunatic this man is. Let him remind everyone. Because if people are only being exposed to his ads on TV or on Facebook or whatever, that's misleading. That's not Trump, okay? That is a carefully put together advertisement from his campaign team. That's not Donald Trump, okay? So that misleads people. Cover him. Cover him. If he's going to have a press availability, cover him. Now, you should friggin' ask him some serious questions. Don't roll over and ask these, softball questions like you do. But that's, again, another topic of conversation. But cover him. Let him talk. Let the American people see that this guy is an unhinged fucking lunatic. All right? And that's what this event last night with Elon Musk did. And, he says stupid things. Not only and there's this talk about him slurring. Like, I don't know what was going on, but the little bit that I heard, there was definitely something going on with his voice. And the slurring I didn't pick up immediately. I picked up on his voice sounded different to me. It sort of had like this Mickey Mouse-ish quality to it. Like it was like more high-pitched and squealy and seemed to be sped up. That's the first thing that struck me when I listened to it. It just didn't sound right. But then people started commenting about how he was slurring his words. And I listened, I'm like, you're right. He is slurring. What's going on with that? Are his dentures falling out? Is it the combination of stimulants and stuff that he loads himself up with? Yeah, I don't know. Before I get to this clip, another observation. This is about his clothes. You see how I'm hunched over, and you see how here's my shoulders, right? You could see there's no like pads on this or whatever. It's just a regular jacket. Donald Trump was doing what I'm doing here. I'm kind of like got my elbows on the table here. This is kind of how Donald Trump was. He was talking down to his phone like this. And there were these huge pads in his shoulders that were sticking out. And a lot was made about that. And I saw commentary about from I forget who it was, but somebody who was in a position to know. And this is about Donald Trump's body shape. And that apparently he's got very narrow shoulders relative to his waist. And so, he's not a broad-shouldered man in any way. So without these shoulder pads, he looks like a rectangle, look like a rectangular box. Anyways, that was the explanation I read as to why he has these special fucking like shoulder, like football shoulder pads stitched into his jackets. And it was really, really noticeable. Another thing that was noticeable, I saw a picture of him from the side. And again, he was, leaned over like this. And you could see him from the waist up. And you could very clearly see the adult diapers in his pants. It was obvious. Now, look, everybody ages, right? God willing, everybody ages, gets to his age or beyond. And, time is cruel to us all. And it changes us. And so I don't want to really make a lot of the fact that Donald Trump wears adult diapers. I think that would be beneath the dignity of this show to point that out. So I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump's adult diapers. And I'm not going to talk about, the people who used to work on producing The Apprentice when Donald Trump was on that show. I'm not going to talk about all those people who have come forward and talked about how Donald Trump would regularly shit himself. And that was the reason that he needed adult diapers, and everybody on that set knew it. And it was because of all the Adderall and other things that he was constantly jacked up on. I'm not going to talk about that. Again, I don't think, this is a serious show. So I'm not going to spend any time talking about the fact that Donald Trump regularly shits himself and has to wear adult diapers. I'm not going to do it. Just not going to do it. So why don't we go to this clip? I'm going to play this clip. And as I introduce this clip to you, let me say this. This is an example of how Donald Trump says things that are politically very, very stupid when he's not on teleprompter. And much to the chagrin of his campaign team, he's seldom on teleprompter. And he talks extemporaneously. He says whatever comes to his mind. And he says things that are politically very stupid like this.
This cutter. I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone. And you are the greatest. You would be very good.
So here this idiot, Donald Trump, is speaking with one of the world's richest men, and he is giddy over the idea of firing people. Now, we've always known that that was Trump's big thing. You're fired, if it wasn't for that damn catch line and that stupid show that he would regularly shit himself on and wear adult diapers, that I'm not going to talk about, though. If it wasn't for that, he never would have been president, okay? That show that he used to shit himself on the regular, that show rehabilitated Donald Trump. Donald Trump was largely out of money, having gone through all of those bankruptcies. I imagine the stress of those bankruptcies might have contributed to him shitting himself so regularly, but I'm not going to talk about that. And so he's talking with this rich man about firing people. And not just as a catchphrase, but he was really giddy about this idea of firing people, like lots of people, bragging about, he was talking about, if people strike, just fire them all. Now, why is that so stupid to say? Because Donald Trump desperately wants the union vote. And that is not the way to get the union vote. I mean, you don't have to be a stable genius to know that being happy about firing people and advocating just firing people en masse who go on strike over working conditions or wages or contract negotiations, just firing them all for striking, that's not the way to win you support of the unions. And what makes this even more stupid is because unions are a particularly strong, a significant part of the vote in some very important states like, I don't know, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Those 3 blue wall states that we talk about so much. Those 3 blue wall states that if Kamala Harris wins those 3 states, that Donald Trump has virtually no chance to win the election. Those 3 states that we just got a poll out last week on from New York Times, Siena College. They conducted a poll of those 3 states, and it showed that Kamala Harris was leading Donald Trump in all 3 by 50 to 46%. So when you're trying to win those 3 states that are very strongly union and have a real strong union contingent to their voting, to go on with Elon Musk and celebrate the idea of firing people who protest or who strike, not really smart. But this is Donald Trump. He's not a smart guy. He's a very, very stupid man. And he's always been a very, very stupid man, which just, it's amazing to me that so many people still don't see it. Just how breathtakingly stupid this guy is. Now I want to talk about something that is completely different. And that is, I'm a former Republican. I am a never Trump former Republican. That does not mean, by the way, as I've explained, that I'm going back to the Republican Party as soon as Donald Trump is gone. I'm not, because that Republican Party, of which I was a member for a long time, no longer exists. It is, they talk about rhinos. The Republican Party today is rhino. It is Republican in name only. There is nothing connecting today's Republican Party to the Republican Party of even 10 years ago, okay, let alone 20, 30, 40 years ago. That party is long dead and gone. And so there is no party for me to go back to anymore. So anyways, I've explained this to y'all. But now that I am politically aligned with Democrats, I am an independent and I'm going to remain independent, but I am politically aligned with Democrats. I'm voting for Democrats up and down the ticket. And so I just want to make that very clear. But now that I am aligned with Democrats, indulge me, because I want to make an observation about you Democrats. And don't take this the wrong way. I mean this as constructive criticism. But I am amazed by the degree of pessimism in the Democrat Party, and the degree to which people aren't willing to fight. And I know they say that they're willing to fight, and I see a fighting spirit in them now that Kamala Harris is, the nominee, and I think that's great. But let me say this. Let me put it to you this way. Here's an example. I posted on Twitter earlier today about, why don't I read it? I think I've got it handy here. Okay, this is what I wrote. I'm going to say it. Texas. Texas is not nearly as red as its reputation suggests. Texas has been trending blue for the last 15 years. How about we defeat Donald Trump and Ted Cruz in Texas this year? That's what I wrote. And while I got a lot of people who were very enthusiastic, I got a good number of people who were just defeatist on the whole thing. Oh, you're crazy. That'll never happen. Texas is too red. Blah, 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 blah. It's a waste of time. It'll never happen. Blah, blah. And I tried to educate these people with facts and figures, but it doesn't work, because the pessimism when it comes to that particular issue, turning Texas blue, is so deeply ingrained. People think, I bet you if you just asked a group of people, which is the most Republican state in the country, I bet a lot of people would pick Texas. And Texas isn't even close to the most Republican state in the country. Not even close. In fact, Texas has been, as I say, trending blue for the last 15 years. For the last several presidential elections, the Republican candidate has lost about 3 points every 4 years. So every 4 years, the Republican candidate performed 3 points worse than the previous Republican candidate. And that has been going on for quite some time. They used to win by 20-point margins. In 2016, Donald Trump won Texas by over 9 points. That's a pretty big win, right? By more than 9 points. Just 4 years later, he won Texas by less than 6 points. He lost more than 3 points. Now, if the trajectory were to hold, and I'm not saying that necessarily it would, but if he lost another 3 points, what are we at? Under 3 points? Under 3 points? He would be projected to win by 2 points, 2.5 points? Okay, you don't think it's possible to turn around 2.5 points? I think it is. I think we've got the kind of candidate that can do that. Anyway, I try to make this point to them, and they don't want, some people don't want to hear it. They just think it's an impossibility. How is that an impossibility? 2.5 points? But really, that's where we could be. It could be a 2-point election in Texas. And one of the things I would get from people is they would cite the fact that Greg Abbott, the governor, just 2 years ago won re-election, and it wasn't even close. But here's the thing with that. That was a midterm election. Okay, Republicans always perform much better on midterm elections than Democrats do, because Republicans, their coalition, they get out and vote. It's just a fact. Don't shoot the messenger. They get out and vote more consistently than Democrats. Democrats ebb and flow a little bit too much. Their turnout, obviously everyone's turnout is much higher in a presidential election year, but Democrat turnout in a presidential election year is much, much higher than their turnout in a midterm election. Now, Republicans, obviously, turnout is greater in a presidential election year than midterm, but not as much more as Democrats. And so it's not surprising to me that in an off-year election, the governor of Texas would win much bigger. This is a presidential election year, obviously. And, I think with a good turnout, I believe Texas is in play. Now, a lot of people said, we shouldn't waste any money. I agree. At this point in time, the Harris campaign shouldn't put a bunch of money trying to win Texas. There's much more important, closer states, like those blue wall states. She wins those, it's over. So you don't necessarily want to waste money that could go to winning those states to try to win the pipe dream, the long shot, not a pipe dream, but it is definitely a much longer shot of winning Texas. Focus on what you really, really can win. That said, that's not the only way to try to win the state of Texas for Kamala Harris. Okay? There's an entire Democrat operation in Texas. There's other candidates down ballot that are running in Texas. So get out the vote. Get out the vote for them, and they're likely to vote for Kamala Harris too. So Kamala Harris doesn't necessarily need to put time and resources into Texas for us to still win Texas. Now, if the game on the ground changes, if a couple months from now Kamala Harris has comfortable leads, big leads in all of the battleground states, she might be in a position to expand the map. And maybe at that point she can put some resources into Texas. They got a high-profile Senate race. Ted Cruz is up for re-election. We can beat that piece of shit. Okay? Anyway, I'm just saying. It's just the knee-jerk pessimism that I see on the left. And that's just one example. I'll give you another example. It's not exactly the same type of thing, but very, very similar and definitely related. And that is, when we were in that period of time between the debate, Joe Biden and that disastrous debate performance, between that debate and when Joe Biden dropped out, the Democrat Party was going through some things, right? They were trying to decide whether or not Joe Biden should drop out. And I will say that the people online, like the people on Twitter, for example, they were much more pro-Biden because they're much more wrapped up in politics, right? They're much more partisan. They got their partisan blinders on. So Joe Biden was under fire. So they just reflexively defend Joe Biden. And so that's what they were doing at first. And they, most of the people, I would say that the sentiment that I was seeing was that they didn't want Joe Biden to drop out. And they would attack viciously. I can tell you, I was at the receiving end. Attack viciously anyone who would suggest that Joe Biden should drop out. And it was groupthink. It was a real groupthink mindset. And we coined the term blue MAGA to describe these people because they were attacking anyone who would voice any opposition to Joe Biden remaining as the candidate. Very much the way MAGA attacks anyone on their side who dares criticize their dear leader. And that's what they were acting like. But then if you actually talk to any of them, if you got any of them to get past the personal insults and try to explain why they don't think we should ditch Biden, it was because it was this hysterical, we'll lose, it'll be an open convention, we'll tear ourselves apart, Donald Trump will win in a landslide. All of this hysterical crap that I tried to explain had no basis in reality. If you understand the current nature of our politics and the way things work, it's not going to happen that way. But you couldn't reason with these people. But they were just scared to death that we would lose in a landslide if we replaced Joe Biden. And it was from a place of fear and raw emotion that they were doing this. And it was counter to their own self-interest. They want to win, right? They want to beat Donald Trump, right? But their fear, their irrational fear of a chaotic open convention and people tearing themselves apart and whatever candidate we had would be crippled and weak and get destroyed. There was no basis in reality to that. There never was any basis in reality to any of that. Who was going to challenge Kamala Harris? Fucking think about it. Think about it for a second. All right? Who was going to challenge the sitting vice president? In order for there to have been a contested convention, you'd have to have candidates put themselves forward to try to take down the sitting vice president. Who the fuck was going to do that? As it turns out, exactly no fucking body. Nobody was going to do it. Nobody was ever going to do it. And if you understand anything about politics, it was obvious that no one was going to do it. Okay, who would do it? The only people who would do it are people who want to be president one day, right? So how does it make any political sense if you want to ultimately be president one day to try to take the nomination away from the sitting vice president, have a contested convention, tear the party apart? How is that going to help you? Because you're almost certainly not going to be successful in taking the nomination away from Kamala Harris. All you're going to do is make a bunch of Democrats fucking hate you. How is that going to help you get the Democrat nomination 4 or 8 years later? Of course it's not. And these people, these governors and senators who want to be president one day, they're not fucking idiots. They know this. You know, they're a lot smarter than the morons on Twitter, you know, with their genius hot takes on Twitter. They were never going to challenge her. They were going to unite behind her. And anybody who knows a goddamn thing about politics, I'm sorry I'm so friggin' angry about this, but I dealt with so much crap from these fucking people. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I try to reason with them, and what did I get? Personal insults, blocked, all of this crap because I'm telling them the truth. And of course, I was born out to be 100% right. But that's anyway, it all came from this place of fear and, dare I say, ignorance. But it's disappointing to see that on the left because because I'm with y'all now, right? We have the same interest here, and yet I see this refusal to fight out of fear of what might happen, right? And if people like that had prevailed, we'd be losing this election, and Donald Trump would you know what? Donald Trump would probably be up by 10 points right now, okay? He'd be cruising to re-election, okay? That's where we would be right now. If those fucking people, those geniuses with all their Twitter hot takes had their way, imagine where we'd be right now. So anyways, it's that failure to want to fight, like Texas. Man, Texas is winnable. And like I said, we don't necessarily need to pump resources in it right now. But these people, it'll never happen. What do you mean never happen? Why would it never happen? What the hell's wrong with you? You know, at one point, Texas was solidly Democrat. And then in the early 90s, it changed, and it's been solidly Republican ever since. Well, for the last, 15 years, it's been trending the other way, as I've explained. It is a winnable state. Maybe we don't win it this year, but we're gonna win it. Now, if we don't fight, if we're just gonna concede Texas every 4 years because, we're a bunch of fucking Eeyores, and we don't think that we can actually win anything, and we just resign ourselves to losing Texas for the rest of time, well then yeah, maybe we won't ever win it. But I'm telling you, look at the fucking numbers. It's winnable. It may damn well be winnable this year. And let me tell you something. If the race keeps going the way it's going, it is winnable this year. And we don't need the Harris campaign to spend time and money there to win it. Anyways, I think in a month from now, month and a half from now, we could be talking about a completely different electoral map. And by the way, you know what state is winnable that doesn't get talked about very, very much, but is a swing state? I mean, it gets talked about a little, but not nearly as much, and that's North Carolina. I think she's going to win North Carolina, all right? That's my prediction. I could be wrong, but she's going to win North Carolina. I saw something today that the Republican governor, Mark Robinson, complete fucking lunatic, is losing by like 10, 15 points in North Carolina right now. If the Democrat running for governor is winning by 10 or 15 points, and North Carolina has been very close, within a point or two at most, the last several presidential election cycles, why the hell do you not think we can win it this year? We absolutely can win it this year. And I think we're gonna. But I just would like to see more fight. Now, I have seen more fight lately, but it's only now that Kamala Harris has become the nominee. And these same people who are all enthusiastic right now, we wouldn't have it if she wouldn't be our nominee if they had their way. And even these people, a lot of these people on cable news, which is where a lot of these online folks I'm talking about get their talking points from. MAGAs get their talking points from Fox News. Sad to say, a lot of people on our side just repeat talking points too. Okay, and so I see the talking points. I'm watching MSNBC and CNN, right? I watch MSNBC more than CNN because fuck CNN. I'm sick of the Trump cultists they have on that network as paid contributors. But let me just give you an example of one person I'm talking about. Joy Reid, right? And I like Joy, but she was one of these people adamantly opposed to switching, to booting Joe Biden off the ticket, for having him drop out of the race. She was very upset about it. She was angry. And she was going after people on her show who would suggest that Joe Biden drop out of the race. She was very, very hardline on that. But then, literally the second Joe Biden dropped out and endorsed Kamala Harris, she was over the moon excited that Kamala Harris was going to be the nominee. She has been giddy as hell ever since Joe Biden dropped out. And I'm like, what the fuck? You were just attacking people who wanted the very thing you're fucking happy about now. And it's not just Joy Reid. It's freaking so many people on the left. And it's like, did you all forget what you just said 2 seconds ago? It scrambles your brain. I mean, it's just, people give you a whiplash. It's nuts. Okay, what else do I have? Fox News. Oh yeah, I want to say this about Fox News, and then I want to read a comment from someone who commented on my last video. But Fox News, I don't watch Fox News. Sometimes I tune into Fox News, if there's some breaking story, and I want to see what Fox News is saying. For example, when Donald Trump was convicted of those 34 felonies in New York, I went over to Fox News. I wanted to see how they were covering it, right? And so stuff like that. I wanted to see when Joe Biden dropped out. I wanted to see how Fox News was covering it. But, on a regular basis, I do not watch Fox News. But I don't have to know what Fox News is saying because I'm on Twitter a lot, right? And I'm on YouTube and I read all these comments. And I can tell exactly what points Fox is making by reading the comments people leave for me on Twitter and elsewhere. Because none of these Trump cultists have an original thought. None of these people, are capable of having original thought. So anything that they say, they got somewhere else. And when you're seeing the same thing from, multiple Trump cultists, you know, okay, that's what Fox News is saying. Yeah, it's so clear. And one of the things that I know that is being said on Fox News right now, even though I haven't watched Fox News at all in weeks, I guarantee you, if I put on Fox News, I would be hearing this point being made over and over and over again, and that is that Kamala Harris refuses to sit down for an interview with the media. I know that's what they're saying because I keep seeing that comment from these Trump cultists on Twitter. So I know that's what Fox News is saying. And it makes me laugh. It's so funny when you see it and it's almost like verbatim. They all say the exact same thing. I equate them to the Borg, from Star Trek. They're part of the hive mind. None of them have a original thought at all. It's just piped into their brains, from the Borg leader. And, they just repeat whatever they hear from Fox News. Anyway, now responding to that point, I think it's funny. I think it's funny. That's all they have. Like that's like the best argument they have right now against Kamala Harris. They have no idea how to run against her. They have no idea how to criticize her. If they're not saying something just flat out racist, then they're saying something stupid like she won't sit down for a media interview, right? Like who cares? That's like all they have. And my opinion on this is good. Don't sit down for a media interview. Why should you? Now, I'm sure at some point she will, but I don't care if she doesn't. She can go this whole fucking campaign and not sit down for one interview, and that'd be fine by me. What's the point? The point is about getting your message to the American people. And taking questions from the press needs to be part of your communication strategy. The press aren't entitled to interviews. It's not part of the job. You're not obligated as a candidate to sit down for an interview with some member of fucking ABC or whoever else. You do it as part of a communication strategy for your campaign. To me, what's the point in talking to these people? All they're going to do is ask you questions about what Donald Trump said about you, or they'll just ask you whatever, they're saying on Fox News. They'll just ask you about whatever ridiculous bullshit accusation you're getting from Fox News or Trump. That's all they're going to do. They're not going to ask serious questions. They don't ask serious questions. So what's the point? Unless, the way I look at it is, unless you see some benefit to your campaign, fuck them. Fuck them. Now, I'm sure she's not going to take my advice, and I'm sure at some point she'll sit down for an interview, and she'll probably do just fine because she's more than capable. But I'd say just fuck them. And you don't need them. Look at how you're doing right now. The campaign's firing on all cylinders. Why do an interview? Okay. What happens if you go on to ABC or NBC and you think you go with one of those networks because you think they're serious journalists over there, and they ask you some kind of bullshit gotcha question, right? What do you think is going to make news out of that interview? That bullshit gotcha question. Or what if you fumble in that? I mean, she's good, but she's human. She could fumble. She could say something maybe not as artfully as she should have. And it's that's going to be played over and over and over. She could sit down for an hour-long interview, 59 minutes of which is flawless, perfect. And then 1 minute she falls off her game and she says something inartfully. That 1 minute is the only fucking thing anyone's going to hear about from that interview. That's it. And it's going to be, Fox News is going to be going with that 1 minute clip 24 hours a day for a month. So, I don't think it's a good idea. Whatever. But I'm not on the campaign. But anyways, to me, when people say that, oh, she has to do an interview, I say, who gives a shit? I'm glad she's not doing any interviews. Why interrupt her momentum? Right? What she's doing right now, it's working. So stick with that. If at some point it stops working, change the game up a little bit. But to me, an interview is a risk. Maybe not a very high risk, because like I said, she's more than capable. She's going to do a good job, I'm sure. But it's a risk nonetheless. She's doing great right now. Stick with it. Okay, now let me end today's show with a comment. So I had somebody, a Trump cultist, who watched my video from yesterday, and he wrote, "You said the president can't do anything about inflation." Well, first of all, it's not exactly what I said. So there's not much he can do. He can't do anything directly, that's for sure. But there may be things at the margins which could have a tangential ripple effect and kind of maybe affect inflation. But no, largely that's correct, although it's not exactly what I said. Presidents can't do anything about inflation. Anyway, so he writes, "You said president can't do anything about inflation." And then he's got two laughing emojis, with the laughing face and the tears coming out of the side of his eyeball. So he's got two of those. Must have found that really, really funny. Then he wrote, "The economy is doing well, ? And then two more laughing emojis. You can tell he's very, very serious and gifted writer. And then he wrote T-D-S, TDS, which I assume means Trump derangement syndrome, because that's, their go-to. Anybody who criticizes Donald Trump has TDS. So I wanted to just respond to my friend, I don't know what his name is. He goes by the handle @KenTouchRuss. 42, 47. So Ken Touch, let me respond. First, the economy is doing well, pal. By every metric, the economy is doing well. The one spot in the economy that we all wish was doing better is inflation. But everything else is really doing well. Unemployment is low. It's like 4.2% or something like that, which is historically very, very low. That's damn near, full employment. The economy continues to grow. We are not in a recession, despite what Donald Trump wishes. We are not in a recession. We, in fact, have the strongest economy in the entire world. So it's kind of strange to try to, it's a hard sell to try to badmouth the best economy in the world. So there's that. Second, as to the inflation, what is inflation? Right? Inflation is the increase in the price of goods and services. So you're laughing when I say that a president doesn't control inflation. You're laughing, I guess, presumably because you think the opposite is true, that a president does control inflation. So if inflation is the increase in prices of goods and services, how does a president control that exactly? Does he have the authority to go down to Walmart and change the prices, of a blender or whatever? Does he have the authority to go to the grocery store and tell the store what to charge for a gallon of milk? Is that how it works? Because it's not, okay? That's inflation. Cost of goods and services are not within the powers of the president to control. They're not even within the powers of Congress or the federal government to control, okay? We have a free market capitalist system here. Now, perhaps you think we have a different kind of system. Perhaps it's the kind of system you want, because apparently you think a president has the authority to set the price of goods and services, and presumably you want him to. So what kind of a system is that? You pretend to be against socialism and communism and all this kind of stuff. The kind of system that you are describing would be beyond socialism, beyond communism, for the president to have the authority to set the price of goods and services. That would be an absolute dictatorship. That's what you seem to be advocating. And I bet you would call yourself a conservative if I had to venture a guess. So is MAGA conservatism stands for absolute dictatorship? Because that's what you seem to be advocating here in a roundabout sort of way. But at the bare minimum, you have demonstrated that you have no fucking idea what powers a president has, okay? And it's kind of embarrassing that you think a president can set the price of a gallon of milk. Okay, what else? And as for your last point, I'm not going to directly address your little laughing emojis because, what can I say? But as for your TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome, I've been saying this for a while. Try to bear with me here, little guy. The only people with Trump derangement syndrome are people like you who still support Donald Trump after everything we know about him. And I mean, think about it. How utterly deranged does a person have to be to support a man who is a 34-time convicted felon, is facing 3 other indictments, has committed all kinds of crimes, has been found guilty in the state of New York of massive fraud, and has to pay about $500 million in disgorgement, not fines, disgorgement. That means he has to give over his ill-gotten gains that he received as a result of his criminal fraud. So many crimes, in the insurrection, all those crimes, election interference, stealing, government documents, obstructing justice, committing tax fraud and business fraud, and raping a woman. He was found liable for raping a woman. And by the way, just so you know, There was a Trump supporter on that jury, at least one. Not all of them have spoken to the press, but one of them at least said he was a Trump supporter, and he had to. He was compelled by. He had to follow the law, and it was clear that Donald Trump was guilty of rape. So he raped a woman, then he defamed her, then he defamed her again, and he owes her tens of millions of dollars. And so anyone who could support a rapist, a criminal, a guy who has violated the Constitution more than any other president in the history of the country, how you can still support that guy, you'd have to be deranged. So the only people who have Trump derangement syndrome are people like you. People like me who oppose Donald Trump don't suffer from any kind of derangement, right? It's you. Look in the mirror, little guy. But I thank you. I thank you for watching. I thank you for trying to make an argument. I mean, you failed pretty miserably, but at least you tried, okay? So there you go. Kudos to you, little guy. That'll do it for me. I'm done. Hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please share this channel with friends and family who you think might like it. And until next time, be well, and I'll talk to you again soon.